And we are live. We are live. Wow, wow, wow. So, welcome to another podcast episode of Conserve Ya Energy. I am your host, Mr. Adasa, and I am joined by my co-host today, Miss Valerie. How are you doing?
I am doing amazing.
And Minister
Glad to be
Fredrick.
here.
Thank you for coming. And Minister Fredrick Norman. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, absolutely phenomenal, Mr. A. It is a tremendous blessing to be in the presence of some of those who are still in their right mind. So I'm doing good,
So
or in their righteous mind. Let me say that.
amen, amen.
Amen.
We had a we
Right.
had a little bit of a test run last week to see, how we gelled as a unit, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I'm looking forward to making this a regular thing of ours. And I just wanted to let whoever may be viewing know that we also are expecting someone else to join us shortly. So as soon as everything is in order, we'll have this gentleman join as well. But I feel like to jump off this relationship that we are venturing into. Um, One of the things that the three of us have in common is the idea of conservatism and what conservatism means. I know that from an ideological standpoint, I myself lean more towards libertarianism. Uh, I'm a fiscal conservative, and like Minister Norman stated last week, uh, that doesn't lock you into any type of political party. What it does is it gives you the freedom to make decisions based upon the characteristics, character traits, personality of the individuals that you are considering in positions of leadership. And so if there's someone in the Democratic Party that makes sense, even though, we probably would agree that's not as likely to happen, not, as common happening. But if someone in the Democratic Party is covering some of the bases that we consider, high, levels of our interest, then we'll consider them. Same thing with someone in the Republican Party. Same thing with someone that may be running independently. It does not matter. And so we want to make that very clear. This is a totally unbiased platform. We believe what we believe, but we are open to any level of information that could possibly sway the conversation or possibly change our minds. So today, what we want to talk about is what is conservatism and the Black community's relationship with conservatism. I think that there is this idea that we are people love to throw it around that Black people are not monolithic, but when it comes to the political process, we are very monolithic. And hive mind has taken over. People gravitate towards what they see their friends believing in, what they see their ideological leanings, and a lot of times they don't take the time to do their due diligence, to do the research, to find out, perhaps, where they might actually be sitting at politically. And so, what I'd like to open the floor to the two of my co-hosts is to um, talk about the significance of conservatism and give an overview in your minds of what conservatism means to you. And we'll start with Miss Valerie.
Well, conservatism means to me traditional values, family values. The word conservatism, the root word is to conserve. For the most part, majority of us are conservative, as you mentioned earlier about your friend, and don't know it. And what I mean by that, we all know when the toothpaste gets a little low. What do? We roll the end of the toothpaste and we try to get every little bit out of it. Or even when you was younger, you probably saw your mom or your grandmother put water in the spaghetti sauce or in the ketchup bottle to try to preserve it, get that ketchup or the sauce to last until payday. That is essentially conservatism. You conserve something, or an entity, whether it's politics, family values. You want to conserve what those moral values mean to you and to society. And so to me, that's essentially what it is, to put it in the most simple and basic form.
And what about you, Ms.?
Traditional roles. Yeah.
And I want to say that those were two beautiful analogies. I love those analogies. I'm going to use those actually myself if someone asks me. What about yourself, Mr. Norman?
Oh, at the top of that list, for me, Mr. A, and the word that Valerie used, values. Black Americans, deep down, are so conservative according to the values that this race of people, hold to or cling to, that a lot of them don't know it. So something has led them away from what was, because you go all the way back. When you talk about conservatism or being a conservative, and you bring forward that word value, what did our parents, grandparents, their parents, what as it pertains to values, one of the things that they clung to most was their faith in God. Mm-hmm. That was at the top of the list, in spite of whatever was going on, what the times were, what the oppressions were. So their value first was in God. Then they honored family. You go back, to and Congressman Donalds was called out on this, and and everything, for a statement that he made as it pertains to, blacks were the black family structure was more intact during the times or shortly after the times of Jim Crow. That is evident. That is fact. So black family, first you had God, they clung to God. Then they had the black family structure, mom and dad in the house. Yes, oppressive times and all of that and everything. But then also, if you go back and look at that era of time as it pertains to values, that how, and I've often asked this of Black Americans, how is it that coming out of slavery, very shortly after slavery, that blacks were able to prosper? And I'm talking about prosper in a financial way in an oppressive society. If their values had not been in place, they were self-reliant. They didn't operate from a position of what the government can do for me, or hand out, free. No, because they had a structure. They had a value structure there. Mother and father was in the house. Kids were there. They were God was instituted. The values of God was implemented inside of them at an early age. Then they made their own way. So how is it that you could take a people that shortly thereafter slavery was, and the conditions were such as that they should not have been allowed to prosper financially, but they were able to, and leave that as a legacy for those coming forward. And you have today blacks who have more as it pertains to education, as it pertains to finances, resources, but they have shifted away from what the traditional value was, which was God first. So when we talk about conservatism, the black people deep down, I would have to say they have conservative values, that they really, something has allowed them to be distracted, discouraged, moved away from, and things have shifted. So the message that has to be brought forward is bringing them back into that play of, where's God at? How does that play into your life? Forget a party, because last time I checked, Mr. A, The Republican Party, the Democratic Party has no heaven or hell to put you in. Only God does. And so you can accomplish all these other things. And but if your priorities are misplaced as it pertains to values, then after that, then what?
So my question then is, briefly, what is that something that contributed to this transition? I know a lot of times we like to refer back to LBJ, and we like to refer back to these moments in time that the Black community shifted. But even prior to that, what was it that was taking place over time? Because when you think about it, 200 years, it seems like a long time, but it's really not that long. A lot happened in 200 years.
Yes.
400 years really in the whole scope from the beginning now, but let's just take 200, the last 200 years. A lot happened. What was that thing? God has always been on the scene. God has been
Mm-hmm.
on the scene prior to slavery. God has been on the scene. So
Yeah.
what was, briefly, if you had to say, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that contributed to this transition to where we lost sight of that thing, and so we came out of something. I don't know if there's anything more heinous, more nefarious than slavery, but we come out of
Mm-hmm.
that, and then we're prospering. We are
Mm-hmm.
literally prospering, and I will say this. I'll add this too. There's a lot about that story and about that period of time that people are not aware. Like, we had Black people, boots on the ground,
Yeah.
making money,
Yeah.
making money during this period of time in which they paint the picture where we were all enslaved, we were all in chains. No, there were people walking amongst the other, free individuals, whatever race they may be, white. They were Blacks because they had either a service or a good that they provided that put
Mm-hmm.
them in a different space. So
Yeah.
what was it? Do you believe? And Miss Valerie, you feel free to jump in here. Uh, uh, was implemented to contribute to our disintegration, in a sense.
Well, I would say the institution of social welfare programs. With the institution of social welfare programs, it introduced uh, welfare food stamps, and again, we touched on this at the last conversation. Taking the man out of the home, leaving the woman to be the head of the household, which women tend to make more or less than men, which threw the family in a low income environment, which were public housing. And from there, it went from, okay, it's no longer God, it's government. And it went from, okay, self reliance to, as you talked about, in that before Reconstruction, families were homeowners, blacks, were self reliant. They couldn't rely on the government. So what? They became entrepreneurs. They started businesses and things like that. So, here you watch this decline of the family of dismantling the black family to, if we're talking about black families, um, to victimhood, to that victimhood mentality. Oh, I'm a victim, so that keeps me reliant and dependent on the government. It does not create an environment to be self-reliant. Entrepreneurship, workforce development, being a pillar in your community. So yeah, that was the first
So
thing
let,
that
let me
jumped
let
out.
me let me let me ask you this then, and Minister Norman, you can jump in on this as well. Then, why is it so complicated in this day and age then to have that conversation about self reliance and about entrepreneurship? It's clear that we're seeing that black people, black individuals are prospering, not just here in this country, but nationwide and worldwide. They're prospering, but why is it such a difficult conversation to have? And I've always said, there's those individuals that hang on to the past. They hang on to the past. There's a lot of money in hanging on to the past. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
every year, and I probably stated this, and my mother and I, we joke about this all the time, but it seemed like every year, right around Martin's birthday, they still talking about that dream, and it's like that dream, like they ain't woke up from that dream yet. You know what I'm saying? So why is it that? Seriously, so why? And we celebrate this. We get together at Ebenezer, and I'm not crapping on those people. I'm not, but we get together at Ebenezer. We have the same service every year. We have, somebody come out and read the dream speech. It's like we still dreaming, and there's people that make a living off of selling this tired old trope about Black people needing something. We need something. And I'm not saying we don't deserve something. I'll be the last person to say we don't deserve something. We gave a lot to this country. But you can spend the rest of your life asking for this thing that's not going to come. Or you can do something with the time that you have on this earth to make a difference for not only you, but for your family, your extended family, your associates, your friends. You can get out here and do something. Well, why is that conversation so complicated to have?
Mm-hmm.
Why do people have so much disdain about the idea of not relying on the government, not relying on stimulus checks, not relying on anything like that, and getting out here, putting your boots on the ground and making something of yourself, providing for
Mm-hmm.
yourself and family? Why is that such a difficult conversation?
I want to come at that from two different angles, Mr. A. And first of all, you're talking about the dream. Every January the 20th, right?
Right.
I have a dream. Wow. It has held the people captive, right?
Absolutely.
But do you know that you can dream something for so long and never put action behind that dream? That after a while, that dream will become a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Just think about it. When you dream, do you dream 7 days a week, or do you have a dream at night and wake up the next day?
You wake up.
You wake up. You wake up. So the people have been lulled into a deep sleep to continue year after year. January 20th sound the same thing. I have a dream. One of the great mistakes, Dr. King, as great as the impact that he made for all humanity, one of the great mistakes that Dr. King failed in, he never duplicated himself in his lieutenants. He never did. And that's been talked about on many occasions. Jesse didn't have it. Abernathy didn't have it. Hosea didn't have it. Dr. King never duplicated himself inside of them. So when he left here, all they could do was what? Divide and each go in their own direction to profit off of what his theme was, but not unite. Or it's like when Jesus, I made a post the other day, Mr. A, and I said, the problem that the church has made is it continues to celebrate Jesus. But Jesus didn't come to be celebrated. He came to be duplicated. So what was the model that Jesus put forth? He duplicated himself inside of those 12 disciples because he knew that there was a day, according to scripture, that he would walk with them no more. So what's the strength of me duplicating myself inside of my core group, my team, my followers, et cetera, et cetera? Because if I leave here today, if I've duplicated myself inside of you, Mr. A, you can carry that mission forward just like I was still there. Jesus was very impactful in it, but Dr. King made that mistake in never duplicating himself inside of his lieutenants that was with him at that time, and it was all centered on him. Jesus took it away from him and he put the focus on the followers. So in modern day times, the best they could do was every January 20th, I have a dream. You haven't woken up out of that dream yet. So now it has become a nightmare. Now, here's the second part of where I was going to come in on. You said something very, very key. You said God has always been present. Absolutely. God is still present. That's a fact. So if he's still present, then who left the room?
It looks like we left the room.
We left the room.
We left the room.
We left the room. God didn't leave the room. We left the room. How did we leave the room? Why did we choose to leave the room? Well, that scripture in the Bible says that what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet lose his soul? See, we went running after trinkets and trinkets and trinkets and trinkets and trinkets, as to where the run has become so strong in the black race. Now, going back to the values that you talked about, there used to be, I know coming up in my time in where I grew up, and the conservative values, and there was certain things that black people just would not do. They just would not do it because of what? The values that were there. Now, does that mean that black people didn't have their issues and flaws and all that? No, all races have that. But there was certain, I remember in my day, in my time, that there used to be a sense of shame. I'm just not going to do that. We wasn't raised like that. We're not going to do that. When I watched the National Association of Black Journalists with the interview with President Trump, and the young lady, who, in the blue, not familiar with her name, but she was like the lead, interviewer. And as I sat there in the first few minutes and just watched that, and I'm literally sitting there saying, now, her age group, she looked like she might have been in maybe, I don't know, maybe late 20s, maybe 30s. What is Donald Trump's age?
I think he's what, 78?
78? Were we raised in our day? Sister Val, were we raised in our day to talk to our elders like that? Even if we did not agree with their position, we may not have liked them, but that was a respect that was instilled inside of us. You didn't talk to elders like that. She was talking to this man, a world leader, someone old enough to be her grandfather, like she was talking to one of her ratchet girlfriends at the club. Where did we lose that?
I mean, what did we hear all of us growing up? Stay out of grown folks' business. And when grown folks came in the room, what did we do? We had to get up and leave.
So
that
where
was
did we?
a common knowledge thing.
Right. So how has it crept into this younger generation, society of Black Americans, as to how she sat there and addressed that man old enough to be her grandfather with no shame?
Because we've given the approval for this type of behavior. A lot, like I know that a lot of times we want to, and I'm not saying it's about you necessarily. We want to point the finger, but then it's the previous generation's responsibility to make sure
Absolutely.
that they are raised properly. And when you look at the examples, especially from a journalistic standpoint, who do we have? We talked about this last week. We the three of us, we go to very specialized, nuanced areas to find our information. You know what I'm saying? I can always tell in a conversation with someone where they get their information from.
Yes.
And the reality is this, that most of us, I'm not putting myself necessarily in this category, but I say most of us don't have the wherewithal to really dig. If having the right information is that important to us, then there's work that has to be put in to make yourself a viable conversationalist, to be able to converse on a level with these people. I thought it was overall. I was really excited about when they first announced. I was excited about the possibility of having President Donald Trump sit down with the black journalists. I thought, man, this is an opportunity for them to hold his feet to the fire, and he should be able to knock it out the park.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a piss poor all the way around. It was cringeworthy. I just cannot understand the wasted opportunity that was right there in front of
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing all the way around has got me where I don't even understand anymore what it is that we are dealing with. And that's why I believe that what the three of us having a conversation is so important, because it's obvious we need new black voices, the voices that's going to encourage others to actually do the work, to put in the work, not just be a figurehead, but to actually get out here and make a difference, and hopefully impact some change within, their extended, family and friends and associates, because we need help. We need help.
Mm-hmm.
We need help from the inside. We need the proper infrastructure, so that we can be the united front that we're capable of being. And right now, there's a lot of division, and it's the prisoners are running the outfit here, and there's no real leadership. There's no
Yes.
leadership.
Yes.
I want to
Well,
use. Go ahead, Miss Valerie.
well, I wanted to chime in a little bit because you kind of threw the question out there, about what could have happened for the disrespect of the young lady with Trump. Well, it goes back to what I said: the moral generational decline. The single mothers, when that single parent household percentage increased from what 30 some percent to now over 70%. You have the single mothers of that generation who are now grandmothers. Okay, no family in, or no man in the home, so there was no man there to bring balance and to lead that family, or to raise that young man and to validate him for being a man, and to teach that daughter, you respect me, I'm your father, and let me teach you how to respect your elders. Okay, and this is why you see the whole gender wars, where with black women and black men, they don't even want to date each other. Okay, there's this whole war going on about the total disrespect for the black man, and the y'all queens, we queens, we're boss, and all this
Mm.
masculinity energy.
Right.
Okay, so the roles have been reversed in the traditional family conservatism. It was the father was the head, who worked outside the home. Sometimes the mother worked and she didn't, but her main job was to keep the home and take care of the children.
Now,
Okay?
if you notice, I don't even know if you noticed this, but for whatever reason, there was not one black male on that panel.
Oh, you notice, Mr. A. That was my question. I'm like, where is
Now,
the black
only one now,
male?
and for sake of being considered sexist, I'm definitely not that.
That's an
But
observation. It's not sexist.
right, so there were no black males. Now, we could take that any number of ways. There's been polls that have been out as of late that have stated that black males are in large numbers transitioning over to the Republican Party. In large numbers, and we know generally historically, as black males go, black women, their children go along with them. But what has happened is, in this particular instant, it appears they didn't want to even create an atmosphere in which a black male could present his positions as he talks to a past, a president. So we had nothing but female energy on that stage. And it's a known fact that black women as a whole that's the largest group that holds the most disdain against the former president.
Yes.
So it was intentional to have this setup. And it was so, I mean, at least you would expect at least one brother on the stage. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the Association of Black Journalists. At least one brother should have been on the stage. And so, yeah, these things are becoming, look, I don't, hey, we got to start calling it like we see it. We have to start. That's what's one thing that's missing is truth in journalism. We have to start calling it like we see it. And it's bad out here for brothers. It's bad out here for brothers. So I want to get back. If you have something to
Let-
say, I wanted to get back on conservative because I had a few more questions I wanted to ask before we move forward. But
Okay.
did you have?
Let me throw this in right quick, Mr. A. The last statement that you just made. We have to get back to calling it like we see it. Okay. And during my 25 years, in Atlanta Metro, and inside the clergy circle, and I sat down with some of the, ministers, the well-known name ministers from mega church all the way down to small church, storefront and all in between, didn't matter. With one recurring question to these ministers that I sat with, since the black church is known to hold the largest sway, or it has the loudest voice as it pertains to the gathering of Black Americans every Sunday. The church used to be the moral voice that would go out into the hearing of the Black congregants, et cetera, et cetera. These are the conversations I had with a lot of Black clergy in the Atlanta metro area. And so to drive it home, I would ask those clergy members, why has the voice of those who stand in the pulpit gone quiet on a lot of these matters that pertain to life and godliness? Why? Why is it that the church looks the other way? You hold sway. You got a mega church. You hold in sway over 20,000 people. The last church that I was a part of, Bishop Bronner, you probably know, Word of Faith, 20,000 plus membership. Every Sunday, you're holding that kind of sway over a group of people. Why is the church today not dealing with a lot of the moral issues of today? Why is that quiet? When we want to talk about this, we want to talk about that, but the things that pertain to the moral issues of the day, why has the Black church, which holds the largest voice, they hold a larger voice in the ears of Black Americans than the Republican Party do, the Democratic Party do? So when you're talking about a shift away from God, as I would have the conversation with the ministers, the Black church has shifted away from God. If we don't start calling it like we see it, then what is the overall end result? I think you said it, Mr. A, or it might have been Valerie that said it. Each generation, it was said in this regard, has moved further away from God. So the previous generation. So me personally, I don't know the behavior that we see today of a lot of the younger generation, Black Americans. In the circles that I move in up here and everything, one of my things is the present generation has gotten to that place because something did not happen in the previous generation. Where did it start to go off course? If the previous did not instill values in this present generation, then I'm not surprised that that young lady would sit there and talk to an elder like that, whether he be white, whether he be Black, Jew, Asian, whatever. The behavior pattern that was presented, something has gotten dislodged in the previous generation, and it causes each generation to move further away from the things of God, whether it be politically, whether it be socially, whether it be spiritually. The end result shows up in the behavior patterns. So until the moral voice of God comes back into play, that's the only hope that I cling to. Because when you talk about a party, and this is one thing that, I agree with President Trump on, and he has made this statement on numerous occasions. This is a nation where we don't worship government, we worship God. But God has been removed off the scenes in a lot of these houses that hold the hearing of a people. So when the behavior shows up, why do we expect anything different if no behavior pattern? There used to be a time that you go into the church and they did not allow a certain behavior. Well, today, 2024, can you go into the church and see some of the same behavior allowed that they do out in the world?
Oh, absolutely.
See, I'm one that call it like I see it.
If you were just real quick.
Well, let me say this, Fredrick.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm listening. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this real quick. When he's talking about that older generation, two things that would have been killed in the Black community that we have been seeing going on for over a decade now? Maybe not so much one of them. But if my grandma would have saw me twerking, she would have been like, little girl, go get that switch. I better not ever catch you. Or my brother sagging his pants. Oh no, my grandfather, grandmother, we talk about older generation, the baby boomers. They wouldn't have allowed that. And yet we still see it happen.
Right. We're talking about
how much you educate them on it, they still.
Well, those are family values, and those are
right.
What we're
right.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on, though, was the fact that even before LBJ, even before the welfare programs and the entitlement programs were implemented, the government knew early that if you want to get through to these people, where do you go? You go to the church. You go to the church. Largest numbers of people gather in communion, and if anything, COVID showed you.
Yes.
I don't know how many big name preachers, church preachers, was standing there right aligned next to Bill Gates, next to whoever else, telling you, get your shot. The church is closed. You know what I'm saying? The place where you're supposed to go get the healing, that place is closed.
It's closed.
And they had churches that were volunteering as locations for you to get your shot.
Yes.
So when the government
you can get your shot, but you can't come there for prayer. You can get the shot, but you can't come to pray.
So the government
but who allowed it? That's the question. Who allowed that? The leader of the church. So we can't go around it unless you are willing to hit stuff head on. Then that's when it does become a nightmare, because you see it, but you will not identify it head on for sake of position, for sake of title, for sake of I don't want to ruffle the feathers, for sake of I don't want to be rejected, despised, persecuted, all those things that Jesus were and his disciples were. But man today, for sake of to go along, to get along, you allow anything and everything, then act surprised when the behavior patterns show up. So, Sister Valerie, you spoke of grandmother and grandfather, which is absolutely right. But as it started to shift, shift forward, each generation has moved further away from what grandmama and granddaddy would not have allowed back in our day.
Right.
You would not show up in a church like that. You would not show up like you going to the club any type of way, et cetera, et cetera. So something has shifted in there. And a lot of those who stand to represent or stand in the position of that they're representatives of the kingdom of God have fallen asleep on the job. I'll just call it like I see it. And this is not the first conversation I've had like this. I was shunned by many clergy leaders in Atlanta because I was willing to have the conversation. And if we're saying that we're following the ways of Christ and the models of Christ, then when man takes a position of authority over the ways of God, then how are we surprised when we see what we're seeing today? How are we surprised?
Let me ask you both of you this, because you both reside in close proximity to the governmental structure. And I'm assuming, I know, Minister Norman does. I'm assuming that Valerie, you come from a spiritual background as well. So, with that being said, when we talk about government, whenever someone talks about the separation of church and state, and most people don't really have a clear understanding about what that actually means. And I actually did, over this past week, did a little deep dive because I wanted clarity on what exactly that meant. Because church is always, the idea of church, the idea of freedom of religion has always been present in the foundation of the government structure here in this country. It's always been present. It wasn't a matter of separation in church and state that you can't combine or conflate the two. It was the idea that you want to allow the freedom of individuals to worship how it is that they want to worship, whatever that may be. But God has always been present in the foundation and the infrastructure of this country. Now, I also never thought that we would see a time that, and I know we were kind of veering now, but it's still a good conversation. I never thought that I would see a time where so many people, and I'm talking about on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day, and maybe that's the curse of social media, but there are so many people that are denying his name. Like that, it is almost like a badge of honor for people to say, I don't believe in no God. Your God doesn't exist. You talking about that fantasy man in the sky. So how then, when we're talking about the issues within the Black community and where we're lacking, and we're going back to this one thing, which is the lack of God in the family, how then does that relate or become relative to a community that doesn't even accept him as a reality?
Mm-hmm.
If God doesn't mean anything to you, then the absence of God doesn't mean anything to you.
Yes.
So what are we is up against? What is this battle that we are fighting when we talk about these conservative values and wanting to instill these conservative values back into our community, while at the same time the same community they don't value the value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When no value has been ascribed as it pertains to the Godhead, the presence of God, who God is. When no value has been ascribed, or he has not even been brought forward, in the freedom of, of the life that people live, then the younger generation has nothing to cling to hold to. Yeah, he's that, fairy tale in the sky. Yeah, he's that fake man. He ain't real, et cetera, et cetera. Something was replaced in what the grandmamas and grandfathers and parents of our day used to instill inside of us, et cetera, and it was the presence of God. So, but I have solidly declined, over the years as it pertains to something has replaced God. One value has been inserted for another value. And I believe that all the evidence shows that value that has been inserted while another one was removed was materialism, because blacks never had, per se. They didn't come from, knowing what abundance was like and living this lifestyle of, I got the big jobs, the bank accounts, the careers, the titles, and so all of those things have, and it talks about it in Genesis, over in Exodus with the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Well, idolatry in the materialism realm has become a god in the Black community. It has. What I got, that's my God. Where I went to school, that's my God. Look at the Greek organization or the sorority that I'm a part of. What are you talking about? This God? I'm making 6 figures a year. I got a big house out in. I drive this type. You just listen to it in the communities, but they're so far removed from God Himself. And then you go to a church that don't really. You having a lot of motivational speakers. The church is full of, you got motivational speakers who are detached from the reality of who God is Himself. So the job in the church, or in a lot of churches, not all, but the pastors today are simply, a lot of these people are hired. They're not called of God. They don't push forth the kingdom of God message like Jesus did. So somebody just, I walked in, tore up, I left, tore up. Why? He gave me a motivational speech for 20 minutes. And once I came down off of my high, it's like somebody being on crack. I'm coming to get it's unfortunate that, a lot of the churches have turned into no more than a local the drug dealer. Let me go in and get my high. Once I come down off of my high, that'll last me for, 2 or 3 days. Now, by the middle of the week, I'm catching hell again. I don't know which way to go. I ain't have no hope in because who I'm expecting to tell me something about God, they're not really teaching anything about God. So I can't wait to get back to church on Sunday so I can get my high again. It's my drug of choice, just like the local crack dealer, fentanyl dealer, whatever. So it's a lot of people are doing church, but a lot of people are not doing Christ. Because if I got to go from week to week to week to week, running on, till I can get my fix again, I meet a lot of people, Mr. A, in my fellow brothers and sisters in the body of Christ. And you, just from conversation, do you even know the man? Have you ever actually had an experience with God? Have you ever really met Christ? Well, my church no, I didn't ask you about your church. I didn't ask you about I'm talking about a relationship that will sustain you when times are good, when times are bad, when you're up, when you're down, when you're high, when you're low, when the devil acting a fool, a monkey, and everything else. Do you have that personal relationship? And in that vein, personal relationship has been removed in a large way from the church today. And I remember sitting down, Mr. A, with the apostle that I was licensed under in 1998. And it was a white gentleman down in Clayton County. And I remember sitting down with him and having a conversation. And I asked him, and I said, Apostle, why is it that we don't see a lot of discipleship in the church today? Now, this was an honest, genuine, pure question, because I want to know. My studies of the Bible, it was all about discipleship. Jesus walking in his ministry, he called disciples to come unto him. And the apostle said to me, he says, Mr. Norman, the problem is with the 21st century church. They prefer compromise over confrontation. The church today has majored in membership. Jesus majored in discipleship. There's a vast difference between the two. So you have churches today, you have buildings today that have a lot of members, very few disciples. And so a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with today, whether it be political, whether it be spiritual, social, you trace it right back to that one who I'm trusting to pour into my spirit, my soul on Sundays. What are they feeding me? Am I taking the time to develop my own relationship with the Lord? Or is it that my name is on the roll at XYZ? And trust me, I understand the local church is the place to, that we assemble, that we gather, we fellowship, that the word of God is supposed to come forth, but it is so lacking. And these are conversations that I have with people periodically. It is so lacking that they went in one way, they come out the same way, no change.
Let me ask you this then, as it relates to, conservatism and knowing that the foundation of conservatism is in that spiritual foundation as well. Um, do you believe, and I'll toss this one to you, Miss Valerie. Do you believe that what we're witnessing today, all the way around, as we ramp up, this campaigns ramp up, and we find ourselves moving towards November? Do you believe that spiritual warfare is playing a large role in what we are witnessing? And with that, is there room in the political process currently for individuals that think for in a spiritual standpoint? Is there space, or should we be for sake of should we be trying to separate ourselves, or is there space for us in this process as well? Should we be as involved in this process as we've become?
Absolutely. As Minister Fredrick was talking, and we were talking about what has happened, and as we've seen the generations decline and turn away from God, the fear of God is what stood out to me the most. That has not been instilled at all. Just the mere respect, even as a sinner, living in my community, we always knew who the church families were, and we respected them, right?
Right.
Now that is not even happening. Um, and when I seen the church share their pulpit with the politician,
Yeah.
that's when the church also went into its moral decline. You had these ungodly politicians coming there, and still today, even seen a video earlier, pushing their ungodly policies and spreading lies literally because why would they not trust and believe what their preacher says? Hey, my preacher is friends with my local politician. Although you step out in your community and you see no workforce development, nothing has changed. The drug dealers are still on the corner of the street selling drugs. Gangs are still rampant. Poor performing schools. Crime is at an all-time high. And you see this year after year. Promises is that they said they're going to do don't happen, but for some reason, like a moth to a flame, that's one of my favorite phrases that I've coined in describing uninformed voters. You keep voting for them, and you're getting burned. You're getting nothing in return. Now, spiritually speaking, I preached this at my convocation a couple of years ago. And I would tell this even when I sat on platform, panels, and I was a panelist on some of these discussions with other believers, was what was more political than the crucifixion? Okay. You had Pontius Pilate, who was the governor. Okay. You had the Sanhedrin, which were the elite council of priests at that time, who made the decision to have Jesus crucified. This was the government. That's why it said the government will be on his shoulders. The Bible talks about that. It's very simple. So no, you need to understand what's happening in your local and state government. You need to have knowledge of the policies because it's ultimately going to affect the church. What did we see during COVID, as you just described? The mandates, the state mandates that came down to where we couldn't even go to church. So yeah, we need to be, as believers, running for office, going to our local city council and county commissioner meetings. We need to be involved on all levels so we can represent God and push policies that not just are conservative but are bipartisan. Okay, so
Now let
that's
me
my
let
that's
me
my
ask
thought.
you in particular, since you're very involved with the political process up in the DC area. More often than not, are you finding yourselves in comfortable rooms, or are you finding yourself in a constant state of conflict with your belief systems?
You're posing this question to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking- No, I mean, it's interesting because I live in North Carolina. I used to live in Durham, and a lot of the Democrats there, it was interesting. They would call on us Republicans, Black Republicans, to come to their certain meetings when there was corruption. All of a sudden they wanted to stay on a moral high ground when they weren't getting their way with one of their particular Democrat politicians, right?
That's
and
interesting.
and so I thought that was interesting. But we had a pretty decent relationship. They would share stories how, oh, it was the Republicans who funded my campaign, or the HBCUs that one of them my daughter went to, a historical HBCU, and I had a friendship with the president at the time, and it was, guess what, the Republicans that were helping them get funds to what am I trying to renovate the school, renovate the dorms, and but you don't often hear them come out and actually give them credit for those things. So that's usually where the policy, so to speak, went by the wayside when they were going to benefit from the Republicans and our conservative policies.
Now, let me ask you this, Minister Norman, because
Did that
Ms.
answer your
Valerie
question?
brings up. Well, that's a great answer, and you bring up a very interesting. Um, uh, you bring up something very interesting, and I want to run this by Minister Norman. Um, historically, historically, when it came to party politics, and this is something that I have a good laugh about quite often, but it appears right now the Democratic Party, they lean more towards these liberal kind of freewheeling policies where there are no rules, right? And then you have traditionally the conservative or Republicans that are based in biblical foundation. And everybody, I mean, I remember when I first moved here to Georgia, the governor that was here under his dead body, over his dead body or under his dead body, I don't know. But he said, we will never sell alcohol on Sunday because
Mm-hmm.
we were in the
Mm-hmm.
Bible. We will never sell alcohol on Sunday.
Right.
And I'm not sure if his dead body, he's probably in the grave right now, but they selling, alcohol on Sundays. But I use that example because, through the Bible Belt, it was known. You can still drive in Georgia and you go into what they
Right.
call dry counties, places where you can't buy alcohol. So, but then people on the other side would say, well, oh, y'all are so high and mighty and y'all so self-righteous and this, that, and the other, but y'all are the ones that's constantly getting into trouble. It's constantly some, Republican politician or some representative. He's constantly getting into some kind of trouble. So, how do you, and I think it's fair to say you are conservative, and you are of the cloth. How have you made amends with the relationship with and briefly, because I know we've been talking, but with the relationship with the church and the conservative uh, ideology or the Republican Party as we know it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Mm-hmm.
believe that it is representative of your belief system, or you believe that they're just as out on the outs as any other party, that they're not any more solid than any other party when it comes to the spiritual foundation?
In that vein, Mr. A, I would, in all fairness and honesty, I would say, when people question me in that vein and they bring up the issues of, oh, you talk about conservatives and Republicans and all, and they just as crooked as, as anyone else. And and as Democrats, and I always try to be relatable, with people. I meet them right where they are, and if what they're saying has some truth in it, I try not to sweep it under the rug, go around it, and so I just relate. I relate to them right where they are. I said, you know what, this is just conversation. I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's an immorality in the Republican Party. There's perverseness in the Republican Party. There's crookery and thievery and everything else in the Republican Party. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Okay, so to hold someone else, to hold one party on such a moral high, I'm trying to take the fire, the boom out of their thunder, right? Because if you're holding yourself on such a, as a party, you're holding yourself on such a higher, platform, but then the evidence is there where the people see you're falling short. So how can you, point the finger in that direction and everything? So one of the things that I try to do to make it relatable in conversation, Mr. I own it. That's one thing that people will have a problem with a lot of times, owning something. If somebody speaks a truth to you, regardless of how hard it is, you may not like it. It's not within your realm or space. If you first own it, I can't, and that's why I love operating from both sides of the aisle, or being able to reach across the aisle. Democrats got issues and flaws. Republicans, you got them too. So if you're going to win somebody, you got to first meet people right where they are. I don't come as Mr. Self-righteous and, oh God, and I don't fall short and I don't have any flaws and I don't, I stand on conservative values, but they got a lot of work to do, et cetera, et cetera. So, in that vein, I try to meet the person right where they are and not deny what they're saying if there's truth to it. Take ownership of it and then find, and a lot of times what I have found in that, Mr. A, is common ground. Now you can talk to a person. You can get their ear. But if they see you so far over here and they so far over there because of the ideology of the party that you represent, then a lot of times there's no meeting in the middle of the road. There's no balance, and there's likely not going to be a healthy conversation that can come forward. So, and one of the things that, and I refer back to Donald Trump, he said during his first campaign, and he said that, Republicans don't think you ain't got some problems too. Yeah, you do. You got problems too. And that's one of the things that I will ask this question right here. Is Donald Trump a Republican? And either or can answer, Valerie or Mistake. Is Donald Trump a Republican?
I know he's a Republican on paper. I know he definitely is a Republican on paper because he got to pick a side. But as
right.
far as,
Go ahead.
But as far as I think be honest with you, I believe he's almost like he's a Republican in training because he's learning on the job. And I think he's being confronted with some things at times that even he was not aware that he would have to deal with as it relates to this political process. I do believe he's an outlier and that he picked the best possible area in which to position himself to accomplish his goals. But I do not. I don't believe that from a total value standpoint. I don't think that he has fully embraced what Republicans stand for. But I don't. But then that's it's an open ended question because I don't even know what the Republicans stand for sometimes at times. That's why I started gravitating towards the idea of libertarianism and conservatism. And unfortunately, because we are still majority two-party system, and being someone who ran as an independent, I know the the burden of being independent in the two-party system. So I think he just picked where he was best suited to do what it is that he needed to do. And I'll let Ms. Valerie you can piggyback on what I said.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you guys are breaking up. You want me to answer or elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in my experience with Trump, Trump has always been a physical conservative because he's a capitalist and a businessman, a global leader. Before he even became president, he was friends with the Clintons. He went to their daughter's wedding. He rocked as a Democrat for a long time. But when he became president, when he decided to run for president, he ran on the Republican ticket. And that's when he's seen how quickly the Democrats can be diabolical. And in my opinion, being in the same room with him, you know, different events, going to Mar-a-Lago, going to the White House, even up to recently of his assassination attempt. In my opinion, I believe this has caused him, outside of America First, Make America Great, to really reflect where, you know, his relationship is with God, and to really hold on to those conservative principles. I mean, I can't speak on where he stood socially as far as on abortion. Obviously, we know he's not open border. He's pro legal immigration and those type of things. So I would have to say, is he a Republican now? Yes, with all the things that he has been through. And I served on the platform committee, so you know, locally here in my state GOP, so I know what the platform means and what it stands for. And so yeah, he's pro-life. You know, that's one of our platform standards, for lack of a better word. And so yeah, if I had to check the top 5 of what the conservative platform or the GOP platform stands for, he believes in that firmly.
Okay. The reason I asked that question, because I had this conversation probably 3 years ago. You know, 3 years ago, and I'm a Donald Trump fan. I'm a MAGA man. I believe in a lot of the same values and principles that he espoused. But the conversation I had about 3 years ago, I said, one thing about Mr. Trump that I greatly respect, he's a very smart man. Donald Trump has never declared that he was a Republican. Never. I agree with you, Mr. A, on paper, and you can be in whatever you want on paper, but to take the position of I'm a Republican or I am a Democrat because of what he espoused, he had to run on one ticket or the other, and the most obvious was the Republican ticket. But Donald Trump, the man, has never, other people have put words in his mouth, but Donald Trump has never declared himself to be a Republican. So I'm saying that to bring forward that parties, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, Republican, all in between, each one come with their issues. But until you know who's representing what, and unless they have told you, then ascribing a title to this person, something that they have never done, who did that? I've never heard Donald Trump say he's a Republican. I know he runs on the Republican ticket. It's just like what's his name?
If it's a duck,
Bernie.
Like a duck,
let me finish my thought. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat, but he had to run on the Democratic ticket. Because if you have any chances of being elected in America, it's only two major parties.
Right.
So Bernie Sanders was a prime example of it. Ask Bernie Sanders today, is he a Democrat? Many have made him to be a Democrat. No, he just had to be a Democrat on paper. So I'm saying the same thing as
He's a socialist.
but many declare Bernie Sanders to be a Democrat because he ran on the Democratic ticket. The same thing with Mr. Trump. Many declare him to be a Republican because that's
But
the ticket.
if
We listening.
Hello?
I'm sorry.
No, we were listening to
Oh,
you. You were saying
what did
something.
you ask? I'm sorry. I don't know if it's. Yeah, it's my Wi-Fi. It keeps, it's kind of slow here. But what I was saying is, I mean, if we're identifying parties and where someone stands in their beliefs and principles politically, if you're running on the Republican ticket, to me, you don't even have to say it. If your whole
Yes, you do.
campaign is,
No.
hold on, if your whole campaign and your speeches line up with the Republican Party's platform, to me, you're a Republican.
Mm,
However, you know, uh, so this is my opinion, okay?
hmm
If I decide to run as a candidate and my campaign, um, uh, I don't know, must be tired. If I'm running on low government, all the Republican principles, less government, um, whatever. I'm tired now. I'm sorry. Then that makes me a Republican. Okay, whether I say it or not. I mean, it's just kind of whatever. Tomato,
Yeah,
tomato, whatever.
right. Well, I think Donald Trump, and like I said, Mr. Trump is a very smart man, and I think I think it was to his benefit for him never to formally speak out of his own mouth that he is a Republican, regardless of what ticket he ran on. He So that leaves room for, and Mr. Trump being a businessman, and he understands
Right.
that in order to get deals done and things happening, you have to be able to work across the aisle with both parties. And that's why I said earlier, that's why I don't subscribe to a particular party. I don't. People hear me, they hear my values, they're like, oh, you're a Republican. I never told you I was a Republican. I never told you that. I lean toward that side of the aisle? Yes. But you're gonna tell me that because I lean toward that side of the aisle, if I hear someone over here on the other side of the aisle, that we share a lot of the similar values. All Democrats are not pro-abortion. All Democrats are not big government. So I look at Mr. Trump in the vein of he made a very smart move politically. If it takes me working across the aisle with both parties, then that's what I'm willing to do. But I got to run on this ticket right here because I agree more with that ticket's stance than that party stance. But at the same time, I never stood before the nation and said I'm a Republican. Like Bernie Sanders never stood before the nation and said that he was a Democrat, but he had to run on the Democratic ticket.
Now,
So
one of the things that not this conversation, but perhaps in the next conversation or one following, that if you guys are down, I'd love to really get into a conversation about the deep state, because I think that in so many ways both parties are being played. They're
yeah,
being played, and when I think about, you may have heard me allude to this recently with this whole abortion thing, and it's mind blowing. I'm saying, like, why does this? Well, like I'm looking at Vice President Kamala Harris and her insistence that this abortion issue stay at the top. Like, if that's like the top three things she talks about. I'm saying, now, why would this woman be so invested in a system that was constructed to destroy black babies. And she is like the mouthpiece in the forefront. But then you start thinking, and then they start talking about autonomy and rights and you know having power. Then you realize, and we talked about this, you know, but then you realize that there's a whole bunch of money in abortions, and
Yes.
it's like that transcends both parties. That ain't got nothing to do with autonomy. They ain't got nothing to do with pro-life. They ain't got nothing to do with pro-choice. The pro-life, pro-choice argument is to keep us at odds. Meanwhile, the people that are really behind putting these abortion centers in these neighborhoods is because, number one, yeah, they want to make sure that black babies are not born. But number two, it's a whole lot of money in those fetuses. Like laboratories are paying upwards of $10,000 per fetus. You cannot get stem cells from anything else but fetuses. So aborted fetuses are valuable. That's the conversation that they're not even having. But on the surface, it's like, oh, I'm pro-choice. You know, we should be able to do what we want with our bodies. Oh, I'm pro-life. You shouldn't be killing babies. And at the end, it's, oh, I'm pro-fetus because I'm getting millions of stem cells from that fetus. Or I got the lab over here and we creating some new vaccines and we need embryos and fetuses for our vaccines. And these are the conversations that get lost because no one is really talking about what's really. There's always like another level above what we think we seeing, and we
Yeah.
are arguing that, you know, down here about BS, and there's a greater level on top, and usually it has everything to do with money.
Yeah.
You know, money that's ultimately that's the God right there. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's what's running it all. So, did you guys? We had so much more, but I want to go ahead and cut this one because we had so much more. I mean, I wanted to talk about, you know, the work ethic and self reliance. We need to do a part 2 on this one because
Yeah.
we still kind of just scratched the surface. But there's so much that I think that we need to really engage as far as this conservative discussion. And do you guys want to uh, make a parting statement as we shut down this second one? And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to getting together and doing another one very soon. Maybe we could do it twice a week if you guys are available. Possibly more. But do you have any words, Miss Valerie or Minister Norman?
I want while it's at the forefront of my mind, Mr. A. I want to touch on that right quick. What you just alluded to, the abortion rights. Miss Kamala Harris, why is that at the top of her agenda? The deep state. Yes, there is a fourth branch of government. Trump talked about it, you know, throughout his tenure. Vivek Ramaswamy talks about it very heavily. A lot of people, you know, refuse to accept it, but there are 4 branches of government. And when a candidate, you know, is something that at the top of their list, and let's go back to the abortion, and it's my body, my choice. I choose to do whatever I want to do. And Miss Kamala Harris, I looked at this in 2022, Valerie, and that was supposed to be a red wave in 2022. The Republicans taking back the House majority. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 U.S. reps. You know, all the climate indicated that the Republicans were going to sweep the House, as where they would have a sizable majority in 2022. Same thing with the Senate. The Republicans, the climate at that time, the political climate indicated that the Republicans were in a position to win both the House and the Senate. And that did not materialize in 2022. And the Republican Party was shocked. They were shocked. What was it that they missed? And I sat there and I followed this thing. And I was telling the church, and it ties back into abortion, reproductive rights, my body. The one thing that the Republicans misread, after all of their charts, after all of their stats and data and money being dumped into this poll and that poll and that poll, one thing that they failed in, they misread the heartbeat of the American people. Abortion rights. The women do not want anyone telling them what to do with their body. And the Democrats read it well, and they ran it all the way through. And the Republicans came out on the short end of the stick side because they misread the heartbeat of the American people. See, abortion and Miss Harris, she's going to watch. You just watch how this thing's unfold here in the next 95 days. She's going to, the Democrats study, they understand, you can poll this and you can poll that, but what do the people really want? And abortion rights, when the nation went into a frenzy with Roe versus Wade, and they wanted to burn the Supreme Court down, yada, 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 and all of that, they held that as a strike against the Republican Party, because the Republican Party is standing on a moral, high ground, which somebody's got to, et cetera, et cetera. But the people, the women of this nation did not receive that kindly, and they made sure that it showed up in the voting booths, in where it really mattered at the end of the day, because they looked at the Republican Party. You are telling me what to do with my body. This is my body. I should be able to abort as many babies as I want. That's between me and whoever, whatever. So the Republican Party misread the moral compass of the nation at that moment. And you can rest assured they understand it. Miss Harris is going to drive it these next 95 days, because they really don't have any other platform to stand on. But they do know what the people like. They do know what the people want. I'm not saying she's going to win. I'm just saying watch her strategy. Watch her strategy. And abortion rights, reproductive rights, going to be at the top of her ticket. Abortion and racism. Watch it. So I pray, in my parting words, I pray that the Republicans would come out of their spiritual slumber a lot of times, what I see, and allow God to show them the heartbeat of the people. It's the people who decide. But when you misread the heartbeat of a person, that's when you end up shocked. That's when you end up surprised. And the Democrats trounced the Republicans in 2022 as it pertains to the House and the Senate. So I pray, my prayer, my hope is that in this 95 days, November the 4th, where the people go to the polls and let their voices be heard, I pray that it's on the side of Mr. Trump. I believe it will be on the side of Mr. Trump, but I encourage Republicans everywhere I go, when I talk to them, you got to wake up out of your spiritual slumber, because there's a slumber right now in the realms of political movement in this country. So that's my position on it, Mr. A. And that's why I rest my case.
And Mrs. Valerie, you look like you need a nap. You have some parting words for us, Mrs. Valerie?
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, it's a delay over here on my end. I apologize. Again, just thank you for having me. The discussion is always, very stimulating and needed to be spoken out. And I look forward to the next discussion. I know we didn't get through. We probably got past maybe the first or second question.
Right.
So I'm looking forward for part 2.
And yeah, keep those notes, because I definitely would like to continue where we left off and even go into some other areas. I guess I would ask this one question briefly before we go. Minister Norman and Sister Valerie, can we trust the system? I mean, when you talk about, when you talk about us anticipating that it would go a certain way,
Yeah.
And then it doesn't go that way. And then of course the other side always says, well, y'all stole it. It don't even matter what side it is, the other side stole it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And I'm one of those ones that always I do a deep dive, and I'm like, okay, I can see where there could be some truth in that. But I mean, just briefly, do you believe that we can actually trust this system at this point? Are we past the point of being able to trust our system of governments, our voting system, or just briefly, or
Yeah.
you still have faith in this system?
Oh, I'll jump in there right quick, and then
You
so
talking to me, Miss?
For both of you, but we'll just
well,
real
Oh,
yeah, I'll jump in there right quick and answer that. And it's so amazing that you end it like this because Valerie and I had a conversation yesterday about trust. And, and Mr. A, I said, well, number one, we know that right now the American people trust in this system of government is at an all-time low, probably in the history of America. So, so that right there within itself, no. But the conversation that we had on yesterday, as it pertains to trust, and I asked, Valerie, I said, Valerie, do you trust yourself? And and without going into all the details, I spun it back around to me, right? I said, well, I don't trust anybody. And she said, expound. I said, well, first of all, have you ever told yourself that, that is something that you would not do or you wouldn't do it again? And God, I've done that. And I promise you I'll never do it again. But you did it anyway, right? I said, I'm going to own it. I know I have. So therefore, I can't even trust myself. So how am I about to trust a government that has shown me continuously lie after lie after lie after lie? Systems, the systems of government, and whether it be Republican or Democrat, my trust is in God. This systematic way of, that doesn't mean that I totally, abolish the system. No, but to put my hope and trust in a system, whether who sits at the top of the ticket, like I said, Democrats ain't gonna come to your house and change your situation. Neither is Republicans. So if any trust is to be in the God-given efforts that he is, in the God-given.
the Republican policies are going to change.
No.
Republican policies are going to change your
Change
whether
who?
you're going to buy a house
No.
at 7% or 3%.
No. Let
Okay,
me say
like a
this,
lot of
Sister
people are
Valerie,
sitting
and
on a
I'm glad
3%
you said that.
mortgage.
I'm glad you said that, Sister Valerie. Watch this system, right? Now, Mr. A, you and I, we met in Atlanta years ago. Yeah, and what connected you and I was we both were in the real estate business.
Right.
That's what initially brought us together. When I would stop by your office and see all the things that you were involved in the financial arena and in the real estate market over here. And I remember now that to answer your question, Sister Valerie, as it pertains to a system, I remember I was caught up in the 2008 real estate collapse. Minister Norman suffered a lot of financial losses behind it because that was my primary business, real estate, fix and flip, fix and flip, fix and flips. And then the market collapsed. Watch this. And I went and I've shared this testimony on many platforms, Mr. A. I almost went into a state of depression, literally. I'm talking about physical, mental depression. For your income to go from $40,000, $50,000 a month, I'm talking about gross. I'm talking about profit to zero. And that's exactly what happened in 2008. A lot of investors that I knew lost it all, lost this, lost that, foreclosed on this, foreclosed on that. But you know what I discovered, Mr. A, also, while some of us were over here on the side of the aisle that had lost it all, I met a lot of real estate investors in that same market, in that same system in 2008 that was making a killing. And I said, God, wait a minute, God, how can this be? How can this be? This group over here done
I was
lost.
referring to the general public and small
Now,
business
that's what I'm
owners. I
speaking of,
wasn't
the
talking
general
about
public.
investors.
That's who I'm speaking of, the general public. These
The
real estate
general public
investors.
don't normally have 3 and 4,000 and $1 billion of dollars. And my business partner was part of a broker team in New York, and they, it was rough on them trying to get people to sell their small businesses because people didn't know how the market was going to go. And not to mention small businesses and schools where gas prices are affected. They're laying off people. Look at all the layoffs that took place at the beginning of the Biden administration and during the Biden administration. All the miners in Virginia that voted for him got laid off
Okay, but
because
Sister Valerie,
he stopped.
let me finish my point before I lose my train of
Okay,
thought.
I
Let me
just
let me
wanted to add that
let
now.
me finish my point. Let me finish my point. There are more 100,000-aires in the world than there are millionaires. There's more millionaires in the world than there are billionaires. My point is, in that same climate, during that period of time, many had lost everything, and many was making a killing in the same market. How can that be? How is that possible? Well, some of the investors that I met, Mr. A, and I was inquisitive, and how is it that you all are making a killing when this group over here done lost everything in the same market? They said, Fredrick, when you understand a system, it does not matter what the interest rates are. It doesn't matter what the mortgages are. It does not matter when you understand a system. And when Mitt Romney ran against President Obama, and President Obama tried to shame Mitt Romney one night, and Mitt Romney stopped him cold in the middle of the stage, because he was trying to shame Mitt Romney about you made $20 million last year and you paid less in taxes than your housekeeper did. Yeah, explain that to the American people, Mr. Romney. Oh, Mitt Romney came out the gate on him, on President Obama, and he says, Mr. Obama, you need to stop. You need to stop. As we stand here before the American people tonight, you need to stop with that charade. He says, as well as I know, men that are in the positions that you and I are in, it does not matter what the economy is. Mr. Obama froze in the middle of the stage. And that's when it started helping me to see greater insight as it pertains to a system, whether the interest gas is $10 a gallon and interest rates are $7 or $8. Those who understand the system are going to continue to prosper, regardless of what party is there, who's sitting at the top of the ticket, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you truly understand the system. So I'm not going to be moved by where Donald Trump is there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I hope he is. Or I'm not going to be moved where Kamala Harris is there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, because I believe at the end of the day, that God has deposited on the inside of every man and every woman the ability to forge for themselves, whether times are hard, indifferent, good, bad, whatever. And these are the people that I draw to and connect to now, because I have saw them prosper in a system where others said, no, you can't, no, the mortgage rates, no, the interest rate, no, the price of gas, the price of eggs, and this, that, and the other. All that is real. But I tell you what, like one of my friends down in McDonough, Georgia, say, Mr. A, he says, guess what, Fredrick? They can raise gas to $20 a gallon tomorrow. Watch what? I'm still gonna fill up mine and keep right on moving, because I've been able to learn this system and push right on through it. That's what I'm talking about right there. People got to get their hopes out of a political party. Do I support a political party? Absolutely, I do. I got to vote for one or the other, but my hopes is not in a political party. Donald Trump ain't going to come to your house and change your position. Kamala Harris ain't going to come to your house and change your position. God has already given each and every one of us, according to the word of God in Jeremiah 29:11, the expected hope that he has and future that he has for each and every one of our lives. And at the end of that scripture, I didn't find a Republican Party sitting there or Democratic Party sitting there. It's all about, do you understand the system that is present at the moment and how to maneuver through it? So that's my position. That's where I stand on it. And brother, you're gonna have to up this to 2 times a week or 3 at least, because this.
No, because it keeps us, iron sharpens iron. It keeps
Right.
us sharp, and because we got a lot of work to do, and I will say that it is an absolute pleasure to be embarking upon this journey with the 2 of you, and Miss Valerie. Hopefully, next time we'll be able to get to question 3, 4, and 5. And I know you got a lot of notes over there. I got a lot of notes myself. Hey, it has been an absolute pleasure. I love the both of you. I look forward to the next time. And yeah, let's keep doing it.
Absolutely. And
Okay. Have a
so
great week. I look forward to the next session.
God bless you,
Thank
Sister
you.
Valerie. It has been a blessing as always. Thank you so much, Mr. A, for bringing this forward. And we got a job to do, so let's just get it done.
All right. Peace, y'all.
Amen. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.